Jurors in the courtroom?
Everybody be seated. You may proceed, Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
During the break, we went over some materials, and has your memory been refreshed, Mr. Rivera?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How many you're a convicted felon, right?
Yes, ma'am.
How many times?
5 times.
We also went over some emails that you sent in May of 2016. Okay? You remember those?
Yes, ma'am.
You remembered that Jessica Rodriguez's email was Sianna Negron, SIANNANEGRON 1020@gmail.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? We established that these are in fact your emails that we referenced, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that in May 10th, that Jessica sent you a number which was 786-357-3966, which was Ratatouille, who you had previously testified to was Sigfredo Garcia.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you reached out to him asking him on May 11th, "What's up, it's me, Tato, you forgot about me, I ain't dead, I'm still alive, I need some money." And that he responded, the next day, "It's been a minute." And then on May 12th, you said, "What's up, my dog, my brother, I'm starting to go to school, holding my head up, you know me, keep your head up and stay in touch with me, tell the family I said, what's up, N-word, miss y'all, much love." Those are your words, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the last few things that we filled in outside the presence of the jury, you now remember these things, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The things that we testified and you were able to refresh your recollection is that when you learned about the murder, in October you said you learned about it before driving up to Tallahassee, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The same day that you bought the gun.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you also, on January 31st of 2018, you testified on the oath that you learned about it when halfway up to Tallahassee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next thing we discussed was the payment. I was able to refresh your recollection that on October 4th of 2016, you said that the lady was responsible for the payment and that you couldn't remember her name.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, actually it wasn't that he never said the name.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we talked about the picture of Markel that was shown to you by Mr. Garcia. We established that you never mentioned in November or January that anything about the color, if it was black or white or color, because no one asked you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But that in March of 2019, in our deposition, you said that it was a color photograph, not black and white.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we discussed the number of guns. I was able to refresh your recollection that on January 31st of 2018, you testified on the oath that on the second trip you had 2 guns.
1 gun.
No. I refreshed your recollection. You did testify today that you had 1, right?
Yeah.
And then remember I asked you about what you said in January about that, right?
Yes.
And then I read you the testimony, right?
Yes.
And back then you said you had 2 guns on the second trip.
Yes.
Okay. Then we discussed the masks and the hoodies, right?
Yes.
And we established that you never mentioned anything about bringing a mask and a hoodie on both September 30th, 2016 and October 4th, 2016, correct?
Yes.
And then the last thing we discussed was the owl on Instagram.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you never mentioned that to the detectives on September 30th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned it in October, a few days later, October 4th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you, the next time you mentioned it was on March 22nd, 2019, when you said you didn't know if it was Instagram or Facebook, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think those are all the questions that we were able to discuss that you refreshed your recollection.
Redirect.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Next proceed.
Mr. Rivera, there was questioning, I
think both, well, I know during the cross-examination about your anything else that's pending out there for you that you have yet to be sentenced on. And it's been thrown out there that you might be facing an additional up to 15 years or up to potentially 30 years. Do you know the answer to that question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you know there's something open out there, but you don't know exactly what else you're facing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to ask you a little bit about your status as a Latin king. You had several questions about that. Did this murder in any way relate to your status as a Latin king?
Not at all.
You didn't come to Tallahassee on any kind of Latin king business or assignment?
No, ma'am.
But your decision to cooperate, did that have consequences to your Latin king status?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that what you're talking about when you're talking about, these threats on your life or to your safety?
Yes, ma'am.
So is it necessary to have those consequences within your gang do you have to snitch on a Latin king person to have those ill effects, or does it happen if you become a snitch, period?
Period.
So you're not allowed to testify and cooperate with the state, period?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and if you do, then things like attempts on your life are possible.
Yes, ma'am.
We heard a couple different things about exactly when you learned that this crime was going to be a murder, either on the road or right before you got on the road for that first trip. Do you know exactly when you heard it?
I can't remember really.
Okay, but it was definitely affiliated with that first trip, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you went and got the gun, did you definitely not know yet that it was a murder, or did you maybe know?
I did not know yet.
Okay, but you got the gun because you knew it was going to be a violent crime.
Yes, ma'am.
There were questions about why the first trip failed. What I thought I heard you say is that the first trip was intended to result in the death of Dan Markel. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that you were actually going to be the shooter, or at least it was discussed that you might be the shooter at some point.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and did that first trip fail because you had argued against doing the murder, or did it fail because y'all basically couldn't find him or couldn't get it accomplished?
I'm afraid we couldn't find him.
All right, so you did express to Mr. Garcia some type of hesitation about doing this crime, is that correct?
Sustained.
Did you express any type of hesitation about doing this crime?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and did that deter Mr. Garcia? Did y'all discuss maybe not doing it or doing something else instead?
Not really. We ended up leaving.
Not really what?
We ended up leaving.
Okay, but was it ever, I guess I'm trying to understand what affects your expression of, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this murder. Did that have any impact on the decision to do the crime? I mean, obviously not, because y'all ultimately did it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you suggest some other resolution to the situation other than killing Mr. Markel?
Objection outside the scope of cross.
Overruled.
Did you suggest, hey, let's just do something else?
Yeah.
What was that?
Go rob the lady.
And when you talk about the lady, who's that?
Wendy.
Wendy was your understanding of a person that had this money?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were thinking maybe we can just go take the money from her and not do the killing?
Overruled.
Is that what you were suggesting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did Mr. Garcia, was he receptive to that idea?
He said no. We
Why
gotta go
not?
take care of Markel.
Okay, so he didn't want to consider that other option.
No.
And why is that? Did he tell you?
Objection, judge calls for speculation.
Overruled. The question, did he tell you, would be.
Did Mr. Garcia tell you why it was you couldn't do the robbery instead of the killing?
No, I think, no, not really.
Okay. You were asked about whether Ms. Magbanoa did work for the dentist that she was dating.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever go to visit her or see her at the workplace?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever talk to her about her work?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever see her doing anything at home that was consistent with doing some work for him?
No, ma'am.
Do you know what it was that she did for him?
No.
Did Sigfredo Garcia ever tell you that you were doing this murder for Charlie Adelson?
For Charlie Ellison? No.
It was always for who?
For Wendy.
For Wendy. And how did, if you know, how did Mr. Garcia know that Wendy was financing the hit?
Objection, Judge, calls for speculation.
Let's rephrase your question.
Did Mr. Garcia tell you who hired him to do this job?
No.
Did he tell you that Katie hired him to do the job?
Yes, ma'am.
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
Did Mr. Garcia tell you, did you ever have any contact with Wendy other than
No.
possibly seeing her on the side of the road?
No.
Okay. Did Mr. Garcia ever tell you whether he personally had any contact with Wendy?
No.
No, he didn't tell you, or no, he didn't have the contact?
No, he ain't had no contact.
Who was the person who was responsible for having contact with whatever Adelson it was that was going to finance this deal?
Objection,
Katie.
Judge, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
What was your answer?
Katie.
Catherine McBanois?
Yes, ma'am.
The amount of cocaine that you all were doing and the drinking too, was that the kind of consumption of substances that was normal for y'all during this time, or was it something a lot more than what you would usually use?
Probably a lot more for me, but he been stressed out, so he'd do a lot more coke than me.
All right, say that one more time, a little slower.
A lot less for me, because I don't do a lot of coke like that.
It was a lot for you?
No, for him,
Oh, it was a lot for
because he
him.
been stressed out, going through a lot of problems with his wife.
Okay. And was that something that was Mr. Garcia doing more cocaine than usual, something that was unique to these 2 trips to Tallahassee, or just for this whole period of time?
Your questions are so complicated, Ms. Kappelman, we're not getting straight answers. If you
Okay.
would ask a simple question.
The
please.
amount of cocaine that Mr. Garcia was using, you've indicated, was more
Yes,
than
ma'am.
usual. And what I want to know is, was it more than usual only on the trips to Tallahassee, or was it more than usual during the whole period of time that he was experiencing this breakup with Catherine McBanois?
No, since the breakup.
Why did you end up not being the one that pulled the trigger in this case?
That man had kids, and I wasn't gonna do it.
You didn't want to do it?
No, ma'am.
And was that it? Was there an argument about it?
Not at all.
So he was fine doing it?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Judge.
Overruled.
And was there any discussion of your money changing at all, regardless of whichever one of you ended up pulling
Not
the
at all.
trigger? In the letters that you wrote that came into evidence, that you wrote to me, why did you want to come? Why were you requesting to come out of confinement?
I was tired of being there. I wanted to speak to my family, see what's going on. I was
So
in a
when you're in,
blind.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I said I was in a blind, and I was tired of being in the box.
So it's uncomfortable, unpleasant, more unpleasant to be in confinement than to be in general population. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it more dangerous or the same to be in general population?
My population is more dangerous.
Okay, so you were willing to take that risk
Yes, ma'am.
because you were desperate for some kind of contact with the outside world?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Judge, she's leading.
Overruled.
You've answered a lot of questions in reference to your role in this homicide. Would you agree with that, Mr. Rivera?
Yes, ma'am.
You've answered a lot of questions over the last 2 days.
Yes, ma'am.
You've answered a lot of questions in the 2 proffers that you've given in this case,
Yes, ma'am.
in the grand jury testimony that you gave,
Yes, ma'am.
the 2 interviews that you gave,
Yes, ma'am.
the 2 depositions that you gave,
Yes, ma'am.
the 2 events where you were riding around trying to help law enforcement look for the guns in this case.
Yes, ma'am.
That's 9 times that you've been asked questions, at least, about this case. Would you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you talked about the preparations that were made for your testimony, but you personally cannot sit down and read your prior statements. Is that your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
And these proffers, interviews, depositions, et cetera, were over a 5-year period, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You were asked about being on, or I think you were asked about smoking weed on one of the trips to Tallahassee. And you indicated, oh, well, I couldn't smoke weed because I was on probation. Why can you not smoke weed while you're on probation?
Because you gotta go piss and it comes dirty.
All right, so weed or marijuana stays in your system longer than
Cocaine.
cocaine?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's not that you were being a good probationer, you were just trying to game the system, basically, and not get caught.
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I'm gonna object to that. That's improper bolstering.
Overruled.
All right, you were asked about being fed information about this case, whether you reviewed the reports in this case or someone reviewed them with you, and that caused you to be able to parrot whatever it was that the state wanted to hear. Was the owl, you talked about this photo of an owl, was that something that was in the reports or the discovery?
I don't remember.
So when you were discussing the facts of your case with your lawyers, you hadn't told anybody about the owl yet, had you?
No, ma'am.
All right. What about, do you remember during one of the ride-arounds, I think the first ride-around with law enforcement, showing them a park kind of behind Mr. Markel's residence where y'all stopped?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that park something that was in the original reports that you would have reviewed with your attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
It was? But you hadn't told anybody about that park yet until you showed them where you stopped.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
What about the hole in the Prius? Had you told anybody about that until you came forward to cooperate in this case?
Yeah, until I came forward to cooperate.
I know, but what I'm trying to establish is that was the fact that Mr. Garcia shot a hole in the Prius, that wasn't something that was known until you came
I
forward.
never told nobody.
Okay. You were asked about some inconsistencies in your statements, and one of them had to do with Ms. Adelson, Wendy Adelson. And the defense asked you about, oh, didn't you in one statement call her Wendy, and in another the lady with the kids, and in another Wendy Adelson, and in another the dentist's sister. This was the lady who your understanding from Mr. Garcia was going to be paying for this hit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And are all those people, Wendy Adelson, the lady with the kids, is that all the same person?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the payment that was retrieved by Catherine Magbanowa on July 19th, 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
Speculation.
Overruled.
You were asked about the 3 trips and whether there were 3 trips in this case. How many trips did you take to Tallahassee?
2.
And were both of those trips with Sigfredo Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
Were they with anybody else?
No, ma'am.
Have you ever been to Tallahassee other than since your arrest before
No.
that?
Never.
Okay. So 2 trips. Why did you suggest that there could have been a 3rd trip? Did you have some reason for that?
Only reason I don't know who asked me that they see me in the lake. I said, that's not. You never see me. If somebody was short like me was Anthony.
Okay. And so some witness had seen somebody behind the Markel residence that might have fit your description. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
But that was not you.
Not at all.
All right. So based on that, you concluded that possibly Mr. Garcia had come up here previously with some other
Somebody
short
else.
person that fit your description.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you also indicate that I know you talked about the map and there were a lot of questions about stopping to look at the map, but did Mr. Garcia seem to know his way around Tallahassee pretty well?
Yes, ma'am. He's smart.
Did you know, did you know that Mr. Garcia had ever been to Tallahassee before? Did he tell you he'd been to Tallahassee
No,
before?
ma'am.
Okay, so you had no knowledge of him ever being here before
No,
the
ma'am.
first trip that you came with him?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But he seemed to know his way around.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, but he did not tell you that he had a trip before you came on the first trip?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about the exact words that were said by Catherine Magbanua the morning that you spoke to her about the money being there, okay? And you were asked a few different questions about different statements that you gave. On 10/4 of 16, page 106, line 2 through 10.
Ms. Kappelman, which day?
10/4 of 16. The question was, but she just asked for him, she doesn't say nothing, answer, oh yeah, yeah, no. She said, who's going to come get the money? Question, come get the money? Answer, yeah, she was like, where the fuck is Tudo? Who's Tudo?
Garcia.
And I said, man, I didn't want to slip, so I'm like, I will find out. What did you mean you didn't want to slip?
I didn't want to go get the money, so I need somebody to go get Garcia.
All right, you wanted Garcia to get the money from Catherine Magbanua?
Yes, ma'am.
And you knew where to find him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That was at Shrimp's house?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where Shrimp's house is located?
Miami Beach.
All right. And did you go get Garcia from Shrimp's house?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Who is Anthony Ortiz?
A friend.
Was Mr. Ortiz there that morning like when you were at the barber shop and you had this conversation with Ms. Magbanua?
No.
He was not present?
No.
Was he somebody that you sent to get Mr. Rivera?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garcia. And you sent him to get Mr. Garcia from Shrimp's house?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I saying the name right? Is it Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Did Mr. Ortiz take your phone with him to go get?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
I had two phones. I think his phone was dead. Something was wrong with his phone that day. I'm not sure if it was disconnected or it was dead.
Okay, and
I
is
gave
that
it.
something that you remembered when you initially gave a statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then you were asked, going back to the morning of the money drop and the exact words that Ms. Magbanua said, on November 29th in grand jury, you were asked about that. Page 14, line
Objection, improper
19 through
impeachment,
21.
It's improper impeachment, it's her own witness, she's about to impeach him.
Overruled.
And when you were asked, how did you get the money, you said, Katie, the next morning, I get the phone call from Katie. Hey, pardon my language, where the fuck is this nigga at? Just like that, I got the money. He need to come and get the money. That was your quote for what you said Katie
Yes, ma'am.
indicated on the cell phone?
Yes, ma'am.
That she had the money and Garcia needed to come get it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then you were asked again on January 31st, 2018. Page 106, line 20 through 22. Question, so Katie called your phone, answer, yeah, she was like, man, I got that money for you. I was like, hold on, let me find out where he's at. So I called one of my friends. Who was the friend?
Ortiz.
And that's who you sent to go get Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you were asked again on March 22nd about the same conversation with Ms. Magbanua. Page 172. I'm on line 8 through 10. Question, when she thinks he's at Shrimp's house, or let me go back up just a little bit more to line 4. Answer, sometimes she'll call and ask for Tudo. Question, when she can't find him, answer, yeah, when she can't find him. Question, when she thinks he's at Shrimp's.
I beg your pardon?
Improper impeachment, improper repression of recollection, actually.
I'll overrule the objection. You're gonna need to start over again, Ms. Kappelman, because you were
All
talking
right,
while you
I'm
were
gonna
reading.
start, yes, sir, from line 2. Was this unusual for Katie to call you, or does she answer? Sometimes she'll call and ask for Tudo. Question, when she can't find him, answer, yeah, when she can't find him. Question, when she thinks he's at Shrimp's house, answer, yeah, but she called, hey, when you gonna come get this money, man, because I can't find Tudo. I said, what? I know where he's at. I just hung up, I called Anthony.
Yes, ma'am.
Same thing, right?
Same thing.
Can you tell this jury, I mean, you don't recall the exact words that were said, do you?
No, ma'am. They just be wording different,
Yeah, I mean,
but it's the same thing.
okay. But you can tell the jury that Catherine Magbanua, called or you spoke to her and she told you she had retrieved the money.
Yes, ma'am.
And the money was payment for the murder.
Yes, ma'am.
On cross, you were asked about, I want to go to October 4th, page 19. You were asked about
Is this impeachment?
getting the money from the lady. And who is the lady when you refer to? He
Objection,
said
asked
he,
and answered.
Overruled.
he said he got the money from the lady. He still haven't told me her name yet. He said, I got the money from the lady. Well, his wife gave him the money. All right, so who's the lady?
Wendy.
Wendy's the lady. And who is, when you say he said, I got the money from the lady, well, his wife gave him the money. So Katie gave him the money. So you're referring to Catherine Magbanua as Sigfreda's wife?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, but he told me about the lady. He told me, yo, the lady got the money. She's going to pay us. One moment, please, Your Honor.
You must.
Nothing further.
All right, jury, have a question? All right, write your question down, we'll go sidebar. There's one question from the jury. Mr. Rivera, had you seen a photograph of Wendy Adelson before you saw the lady walking down the street that you described as walking with two boys here in Tallahassee?
Never, sir.
All right.
I'm sorry, didn't hear what you said.
Never.
Any follow-up, Ms. Kaplan?
No, sir.
Any follow-up, Garcia?
No.
Any follow-up, McMahon?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down. Call your next witness.
State calls Detective Grossman.
So not quite as exciting as it looks on TV. Huh? Oh, anyway, we're working hard, so we appreciate you hanging in there with us.
Garcia drove the entire first trip.
Come on up here, please. If you'd face the clerk and be sworn, please, sir.
You swear firm testimony about giving this to the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Have a seat. Slide up the microphone, please, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
My name is Officer Jonathan Grossman, Jonathan, Grossman.
And how are you employed?
I'm currently a police detective with the Miami-Dade Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division, and I'm specifically assigned to the Homicide Bureau.
How long have you been employed in that way?
Since January of 2013.
All right. And what about before that?
Prior to that, I spent 7 years with the Miami-Dade Schools Police Department.
All right. And did you assist the Tallahassee authorities with the investigation regarding the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, I did.
And one thing in particular I want to ask you about is whether you were asked to inspect and photograph a Toyota Prius.
Yes, I was.
All right, and when was that done?
The initial time that we saw the vehicle, or that I saw the vehicle, was on November 3rd, 2015, and again in October of 2016.
All right, tell us about the first time. What was your occasion to view the vehicle?
The first time I was asked to locate the vehicle, check the color, to look at the vehicle for specific markings, and photograph the car, which is what we did.
All right, and where did you find the vehicle the first time?
The vehicle was actually owned by A1 Lock and Key. It had been sold and purchased by them and converted to a AAA type business.
All right, and how did you know that the Prius that you found at A1 Lock and Key was the one that you were looking for?
Based on the vehicle identification number.
All right, and that's a number that's unique to each individual vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were able to make a comparison between the VIN number from the vehicle in our case and the one that you located there in Miami?
Correct.
Okay. Was there any evidence when let me ask you, this first time that you observed the vehicle, is that when you looked in the floorboard of the passenger side, or was that the second time?
That would be the second time.
Okay. So the first time you looked at it, what items of note did you make about the vehicle?
We noted the car had been painted white. However, we found the true color in various areas of the car. I believe it was under the hood, in the trunk area, and there may have been some green coloring on the driver door of the car.
All right. And did you search the vehicle for any papers or other items of interest?
At that particular moment, because it was a significant delay, and it had passed through multiple ownership, we weren't looking for anything specific at that time because we didn't have any of that information at that time.
All right. And at some point, were you asked to go back to that vehicle to look for some specific piece of evidence?
Yes, I was.
All right. And when was that?
October 4th, I was requested to go back, and
That would be 2016.
I'm sorry, yes, October 4, 2016, and on October 11, 2016 is when I actually responded back to A1 Lock and Key and was able to get my hands on the vehicle.
All right. So the vehicle was in the same possession of the same people as it was the first time you found it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And what additional inspection did you do of the vehicle on 10/11 of 16?
During that time, we were asked to I was asked to look for a bullet hole in the passenger floorboard area of the car. There was no real specific location other than the passenger floorboard and a piece of paper that may have been stuck in the door jamb area of the driver's side.
And then what, if anything, did you locate during that inspection of the vehicle?
During that inspection period, we located a hole in the floorboard of the passenger compartment, at which time I placed a thin screwdriver through it and ultimately knocked the fuel line off that had been damaged previously.
So the hole aligned with the fuel line?
That's correct.
All right. And were you able to raise the vehicle up so that you could inspect the fuel line?
Yeah, once the vehicle, we looked at it, once I found the hole, we went ahead and towed the car to our Miami-Dade Police Department indoor storage facility in Doral, where we later lifted it pursuant to a search warrant and was able to photograph it additionally within our own facility.
All right. I'm going to show you what I marked as states 52 to 56. Take a moment to look through each of the exhibits and let me know if you recognize them.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize those photos?
This is the vehicle in question that I had towed into our indoor storage facility. It's in the same condition that I recall it being in, and it also has the dowel rod through the passenger floorboard.
All right. And these photos were taken during the time that you inspected the vehicle in October of 16?
October 21st, 2016.
That's when the photos were taken?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move the evidence, states 52 to 56.
Any objection?
Yeah, we can see which ones they are. Yes, quickly review, Your Honor. No objection from Mr. Garcia, Judge.
McBanaway,
No objection.
to be admitted. You may.
Publishing page 52. You mentioned this vehicle was identified by its unique VIN number, that's pictured in 653.
Yes, it is. Right above the barcode, you'll see a number that ends with 756. That would be the unique vehicle identification number.
54, what does this show?
This is an image. What I did was I had the vehicle raised by a forklift that we have inside our facility, and I placed a crime scene dowel rod through the floorboard of the passenger side to run through the corresponding hole underneath the vehicle.
What were we able to see in 655, there's a pointer on the ledge right in front of you? That's your
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry. So at this area right here would be the fuel line, and the dowel rod is inserted from inside and showing that it comes out. And this is just a zoomed in version of the previous picture. This is a close-up of under the car, and this is the fuel line that should run and connect directly to the other portion of it, which is located where the pointer is. This is the area that was repaired, and it should not be in this condition. It should be in the same material all the way across, without this portion right here.
So prior to you inserting the screwdriver into the hole, the fix was still holding.
Correct. Correct.
No further questions?
Garcia?
Yes, Judge. Detective Grossman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 82. This is the original car rental agreement for the Prius that you were showing pictures of. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I've seen this before today.
Judge, may I approach to
Good man.
show the document? Go ahead and take a look at it, Detective, and when your recollections are fresh, let me know.
Okay.
May I approach, Judge?
You may.
Thank you. Detective, after looking at the car rental agreement that's been marked by the government as Government's Exhibit 82, does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, I still don't believe I saw this prior to today.
That's fair.
I don't recall.
Were you asked to track down the target Prius in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And would it be safe to say that the VIN information originally led you, thank you, Judge, originally led you to Hybrid Auto Car Rental at 11032 Biscayne Boulevard?
I don't believe that was one of the locations that I physically went to. There was a list of VINs that we received, and once we found out the VIN in question, we ultimately found that at A1 Lock and Key.
And that's where you found the cars that are pictured in Government's Exhibit 52 through 56, correct?
That's correct.
And during your investigation, you found out that that's obviously not a silver Prius, right?
Correct. That's
Okay.
painted over. Yes.
Correct. So the vehicle that is the subject of this investigation had been purchased by a third party or another party, correct?
Correct.
And they've done alterations to it like painted, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you find a tow responder in the center of the vehicle, in the center windshield of that vehicle?
I don't recall at this time.
Did you find a misplaced or a misshapen driver's side mirror?
Yeah, the driver's side mirror, I believe, was black, and there was also a cap on the front bumper as well.
So they didn't alter the mirror here, they didn't fix the mirror?
I don't have any information that the mirror was replaced.
Did the driver's side and the passenger side mirror look the same?
From what I recall, yes.
And were you told in this investigation that one of the original front mirrors was different than the other?
Yes, I believe that was initially what we heard.
But that was fixed in this vehicle, correct?
I believe both of the side mirrors in the pictured vehicle are both black.
Which means that they've been fixed, correct?
Again, I can't testify as to what was done to the car. I can testify to when I saw it, both were black.
Did you inquire as to what repairs, if any, were made to the subject vehicle that's in Government's Exhibit 52 to 56?
Yes, I believe the manager of A1 Lock and Key advised that one of the
Well,
side mirrors.
I'm sorry, I'm just asking if you asked, I'm not asking what his response was. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't ask it the right way. But you did inquire, correct?
Yes, we did.
At any point in your investigation, were you asked to go back to Hybrid Auto Rental Center to make a determination if at any time after June 4th, 2014, up until you began your investigation in, you said, November of 2015, is that correct, sir?
No, my investigation began in June 2015.
In June of 2015?
That's correct.
I apologize. So from any time from the car rental date here of July 2014 till June 2015, did you inquire if Luis Rivera had re-rented the same Prius?
No.
And Detective, you inspected that vehicle twice, correct? Or that you had that vehicle and you did your due diligence on it in 2 separate days?
Correct. On 2 separate occasions, the first one, the car was just photographed. It really wasn't examined thoroughly, just based on what information was requested by us. It was just photographed.
Well, you mentioned on direct examination that the first time you noticed that it was a different color, correct? It was painted over?
No. What I stated was, when we saw the vehicle the first time, it was in the same similar condition that you're seeing right now in State's Exhibit. The car had remained that color. What I stated was, when you opened up the trunk, you could see the original green paint, as well as some areas underneath the hood as well.
So you did open up the trunk and look under the hood? You did some sort of investigation, right?
Correct. We looked for just taking general pictures, and in doing so, we located some green paint.
Okay, and during general pictures, did you open the car and look inside?
Yes, the car was open.
Okay, and the first time you did the inspection, you didn't see what appears to be a bullet hole, correct?
Correct. The first time, we did not notice the bullet hole.
And did you measure that hole?
I don't believe we did. I believe we used a standard circular dowel rod.
No further questions, sir.
Hey, Brandon.
Yes, sir. Detective, I've heard you have to catch a flight. I'll make this very brief.
It's okay.
You've been a detective in Miami-Dade a couple of decades, right?
Yes.
Now, your jurisdiction is Miami-Dade,
Correct.
right? Miami-Dade, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a complete different municipality than Miami Beach.
In a way, yes.
Well, Miami Beach has its own police force.
Correct. We're the Miami-Dade Police Department, but we're the sheriffs of Miami-Dade County, so we have jurisdiction throughout Miami-Dade County.
Miami Beach has its own mayor, its own county commissioners.
Correct.
And it's also a little bit far away from Miami-Dade as well, too. It's not part of the same town or city. It's separated by a body of water, correct?
Correct.
You have to cross over a bridge from downtown Miami to get over to Miami Beach.
Yes.
For instance, if one were to go from, let's say, Biscayne over to Miami Beach, it could be 10, 15, 20-minute drive, depending on time of day, traffic, and whatnot.
Sure.
But it's miles away.
From what part of Biscayne?
This is going to go into question. I'm just trying to clear the misconception that Miami Beach is just a sandy portion of Miami, that Miami Beach is its own town.
Miami Beach is a city. So,
Let's turn over to the Prius now. At some point, you're contacted to go look for this Prius, right?
Correct.
You go out and you find it. You bring it over to the warehouse, right?
The vehicle was brought over to the warehouse the second time.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, I got two separate dates. I have November 3rd of 2015 and October 21st of 2016.
That's correct.
Now, you're a seasoned homicide detective. You know that this is potentially evidence in a homicide case, and you do the investigation. You pull it in, you have it photographed by crime scene, right?
Correct.
And in total, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 148 photographs of that Prius.
I couldn't tell you.
You do know that on November 3rd, 2015, that your crime scene technician came out and took a whole bunch of photographs.
Correct. Detective Frederick Van Loan.
Would you agree with me that it was a lot of photographs?
I haven't looked at the CD, so to tell you the number, I couldn't tell you.
Would it help you to take a look at the photographs?
Sure.
Feel free to take a look and let me know if that helps.
Okay. All right. There appears to be 94 images there.
And that's on November 3rd, 2015?
Correct.
What about for October 21st, 2016?
Give me just a moment.
Yeah.
On that day, there were 48 photographs taken.
48. So for a total of about 150 photographs.
Correct.
And that's because this is a piece of evidence in a homicide case, right?
We don't have a standard number of photos we take. We take the number of photos that we feel necessary. So it could be 300, it could be 50. So
Were you asked to go find a black Lexus?
I don't recall at this time. No, I don't recall.
Is there one single photograph that the Miami-Dade Police Department took of a black Lexus that was located in Miami-Dade?
I don't recall if we did, no.
One brief moment, Ron. Nothing further, Your Honor. Have a safe flight.
Thank you.
Redirect.
Yes, sir.
Any juror have a question of this witness? All right, we'll go sidebar, please. You had mentioned seeing some paint that you believed was from the prior paint job, I believe, in the trunk area. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Could you describe what color it appeared to be to you?
Yeah, it appeared to be the factory standard Toyota Prius color. That was the initial paint.
What
color.
was the color? I'm sorry.
I believe it was the green, the light green.
Okay.
I forget the exact Toyota color.
Did you have a title for the vehicle you were looking for?
We had the VIN number, which is how we located it, belonging to A1 Lock and Key.
And how did you obtain the VIN number?
Through the investigation and with investigators in Tallahassee.
And did you match the VIN number you had with the vehicle that was there?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And it matched the information you had?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Any follow-up, Ms. Keppel?
Yes, sir.
Any follow-up from Garcia?
Nothing from Mr. Garcia.
Back Battle?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. You can step down.
Thank you.
Release this witness.
Yes, sir.
Anybody need it for any reason?
No, not from Mr. Garcia.
All right, you're free to go. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Call your next witness.
Keith Leland.
Grossman, if you'd face the clerk and be sworn, please raise your right hand.
You swear from testimony you're about to give in this case, the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat and slide up the microphone, please, sir.
What is your name, sir?
My name is Keith Leland,
Will you spell Leland, please?
Leland.
And Mr. Leland, how are you employed?
I am employed at the Creative Preschool.
Here in Tallahassee?
Correct.
And is that where you were employed back in July of 2014?
Correct.
Is the preschool located out off Tharp Street?
2746 West Tharp Street.
It's actually got a Tharp Street address?
Correct.
All right. And Mr. Leland, did you know Dan Markel?
Yes.
How did you know Mr. Markel?
Just through interactions with the family in general, because the two children went to our school.
All right. And did Mr. Markel frequently come into the preschool to interact with the children, his children, during the
Yes.
day? All right. And would he do this exclusively on days that he was dropping the children off, or could it have been on days that the mother dropped them off?
To my knowledge, on days especially when he dropped them off, but I'm not saying that it couldn't have been other days otherwise.
All right. And are you familiar with the day that Mr. Markel was killed?
Correct.
That was on a Friday?
Correct.
Did Mr. Markel come into the daycare at all on that Friday?
He didn't come directly in the front door. He went through our side door because we were finishing up breakfast and everybody was outside on what we call the playground. So he entered the building through the side gate and took his children out on the deck.
Is that the day of the homicide, or is that the day? Is that the day of the homicide?
Day of, yes.
Okay. And do you know about what time Mr. Markel arrived that day?
As I said, we were finishing up breakfast, so it had to be anywhere from 9:45 to 10.
All right. And did you happen to notice his vehicle as it approached?
His vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
No, ma'am.
Did you notice any other vehicles hanging around the time that Mr. Markel was present at the daycare that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And tell us about that.
Us being in school, we take extra measures of security. So whenever any of our staff hear a door opens, we just automatically, myself, since I work in the office, come out of the office and just look, see who's coming through the door. That happened at sometime that morning, and I looked out and I didn't see anybody come in, but I did hear the door open, so that's what made me go out and look. And when I went to the door, I saw like a little car facing towards Tharp Street.
Okay.
And
Where was the car?
it was parked directly in front of our main building, which we call the big school.
And do you know the make and model of that car?
I don't know it was a Prius. I know that.
All right. And do you know the color of the car?
Well, I wasn't sure because it kind of flips color. When the light hit, it was like a grayish green, silver color.
All right. And did the Prius hang out there the whole time that Mr. Markel was in the daycare?
I can't say the whole time, but I do know when I went back out there at one point when the door opened again, it was gone.
Okay. I'm going to show you what I've marked as states 50 and 51. Recognize these exhibits?
Of course.
Look at the next one as well. Recognize both of them?
Yes.
Are they fair and accurate photographs of the creative preschool?
Facing Tharp Street, correct.
Okay. States exhibit, are they both fair and accurate photographs of how the preschool appeared the day that you saw the Prius?
Yes.
All right, Judge, at this time I'd ask to introduce states 50 and 51.
Any objection?
Not for Mr. Garcia.
No objection.
They'll be admitted.
All right, Mr. Leland, so where is this photograph taken?
You're looking, if you're coming up the front step of the building at the front door, coming through the front gate.
All right, and when you said you poked your head out and observed the Prius, would you have been sticking your head out of this door that we're looking at?
That front door right there, but I didn't completely open the door. I just looked through the window because at the time it was nothing on the window.
Okay, so there's kind of a lot of,
Yeah, we post our notes, parents' notes and things up
all
there.
right, but at the time you were able to see through the window?
Yes, ma'am.
And would your view out of the window have included what's pictured in state 51?
Correct.
All right, and could you, there's a pointer on the ledge to your right there,
Hmm.
just kind of indicate to the jurors where you observed the green Prius.
I can't be 100% sure, but it was either in this parking spot or this one right here.
And where is the drop-off area for parents to drop kids off?
You're looking right now in front of, like I said, facing Tharp Street, and if you look around this side, but you don't have it pictured, it's more parking spaces, and parents can you can park there and go through our side gate, or if they park here, front gate, they can go through any gate that they wish.
Cross?
Just 1 second, Your Honor, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Leland.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to show you, we show Government's Exhibit 51. Now, you indicated that there's an area where parents can drop off their children. I believe you said to the right of where this fence is?
Well, when I say drop off, I just mean park. It's other parking spaces, but there is another entrance to the school there.
Oh. So would it be fair to say that there's parking back here for parents and then directly to the right of where this fence is?
Correct.
Is there any other parking for parents?
Of course, there's parking across at our other building because we have 2 buildings, which we call the other building the infant house. There's parking over there as well.
Were you able to see who were the occupants of the Prius that day?
No, I could not see inside the car because the back window was tint, and like I had mentioned earlier, it was facing towards Stark Street.
Did any of the occupants get out of the vehicle?
Nobody ever got out of the vehicle.
We're talking about July 14th in this instance, correct?
Friday, if that was that Friday, correct.
Do you remember Mr. Markel dropping off his children on June 5th?
June 5th. I can't honestly remember.
No further question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Leland, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. Since you're here, we're going to ask you questions so we don't have to call you back later.
Not a problem.
You talked about the dropping off of the students.
Correct.
Later on in the day, they're picked up, right?
Right. Well, are you talking about the day in question or?
Just the general practice of creative preschool.
Yes, correct.
So on any given school day, which would be during the weekday, the children are dropped off in the morning, and there's a log kept of that, right?
Correct.
Both the date, the time, and who it is that dropped the child off.
Correct.
Whether it's one of the parents or if it's another family member or a friend.
Correct.
And there's also records of when they leave that day, when they get picked up, right?
Correct. When parents do what they're supposed to do and sign them in and out. We occasionally don't get people to do it all the time, but most of the time.
But as a practice, it's done, and it's something that you, given the fact that you're taking care of somebody's children, you guys strive to always have those
records. By law, yes, sir.
Always have those records.
Always have those work up to a year.
All right. And in 2014, that was being done.
Of course.
Your Honor, one brief moment.
Amen.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Leland.
Not a problem.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Any juror have a question of this witness? We'll go sidebar. So a couple of follow-ups from the jury. Mr. Leland, was the vehicle, the Prius you saw, was it actually on the preschool property or on the street?
No, it was on the property in one of, like I said, in one of those 2 parking parks, but I couldn't be specific on which one.
Can you indicate where your property ends? Where would the street be?
The street would end right here. That's the end of our driveway, and right here is a drainage ditch going all the way across City of Tallahassee drainage ditch.
Okay. And are you aware of any parents having a similar vehicle to the one you saw?
There was only one parent at the time that we were aware of that had a Prius, but it was a totally different color than the one I saw.
Okay. Did the preschool make any report of this event to authorities?
No, ma'am. Sir, I'm sorry. We got a call. I took the initial call from the police, and that was about it. And they asked us a few questions, and then nothing until recently.
So you pretty quickly received a call from the police?
Correct. Yes,
and
sir.
you reported what you saw?
Right. Well, they were more or less giving us a little heads up of what was happening, and they wanted to know if, at the time, had the kids made it there yet.
Okay. I believe those are the questions that were asked. Okay. Any follow-up, Ms. Kaplan?
Mr. Leland, in reference to your having seen this green Prius, that information wasn't given until much later from the initial time that law enforcement contacted you, isn't that correct?
Regarding the car?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so initially law enforcement contacted you around the time of the homicide to discuss procedures at the preschool regarding the children, is that correct?
Well, yeah, well, there's call, and I can't remember who it was. They just asked, were the children there yet?
Overruled. Go
You can
ahead.
answer.
Was the children there yet? I had to leave the office because I didn't know myself, and I went out on the deck to where the children were, and I asked Miss Sandra Ples, and at the time, she told me that the children were there at the time.
Okay, so initially the concern was where are the children, and are they okay?
Correct.
All right, and then at some point, law enforcement reached out to you regarding the pickup and drop-off schedule
Correct,
of the
asked about
children?
it, referred to it, yes.
Okay, but it wasn't until much later, like 2016, that I came out and talked to you
Yeah, it
about
was a
having
while.
seen that green Prius?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, no further questions?
Garcia. McMahon.
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down. Do we need to keep this witness any further? Anybody need him?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you're free to go. Thanks for being here. Why don't we take 10 minutes, let y'all step out? Either side need anything?
No, Your Honor.
If I need anything. All right, we'll take 10 minutes.